version of events emerges over Lionel Messi's no-show. Nations meet to discuss urgent issues in security summit in Munich. And Israel military storm major hospital in Gaza. Hello, welcome to TVB News. There's been a new twist in what really happened in the lead-up to Lionel Messi's no-show in an exhibition football match in Hong Kong 2 weeks ago. Organizer Asia now said they knew Messi would not play 15 minutes before the match between Inter Miami and the Hong Kong select team started. Muसँग reports.
The friendly match between Inter Miami and the Hong Kong Select 11 took place at the Hong Kong Stadium early this month. Many local and overseas spectators were hoping to see the Argentine football superstar Lionel Messi play. Anticipation turned into disappointment and anger, as Messi sat on the bench throughout the entire match. At the time, organizer Asia said they were only informed that Messi would not play at the interval.
At halftime, when it was communicated by the Inter Miami CF club management that there would be no possibility for Messi to play in the game due to an injury, Asia immediately informed the government.
In an interview, the chief of Asia now says something different. Le Monnier told The Athletic he knew Messi would not play 15 minutes before the start of the game. He also said the rest of the first half was spent trying to find solutions, such as having Messi talking or walking around the pitch. Lawmaker Dominic Lee described Asia's contradictory comments as unacceptable. He said the organizer should provide an explanation for the public.
I feel like this is a blatant lie, and it should not have happened. This event, even though it's now not subsidized by the government, was being heavily promoted by the Hong Kong FEB government. So I feel like they owe Hong Kong people an explanation of what actually happened, given that the promoter, Asia, has used Messi to attract people to come to watch the game.
Meanwhile, the government said in a response that the organizer and Messi's club Inter Miami should offer an explanation. Had earlier promised to offer a 50% refund to disappointed spectators. News 9, TVB News.
The Culture, Sports and Tourism Bureau revealed the giant floating heart installations, Chubby Hearts, will receive $7.8 million in government sponsorships. Responding to media inquiries, authorities said the project receives funding support from the government's Mega Arts and Cultural Events Fund. The fund covers the planning, exhibition, fees for collaboration with local designers, security and campaign efforts for the installations. The funds will only be disbursed when authorities approve the report submitted by the organizer after the event wraps up. Anya Highmarsh, the designer of Chubby Hearts, has a shop in K11 Musea, a mall owned by developer New World Development. New World CEO Adrian Chang also chairs the Mega Arts and Cultural Events Fund. The government said Chang had declared the potential conflict of interest during the vetting process. Former Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying said in an interview with local media that a number of major business and professional groups in Hong Kong are not doing enough in showing their presence and their support for the Greater Bay Area initiative. In an interview with the South China Morning Post, former Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying, who is also the vice chairperson of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, highlighted 8 business chambers and professional bodies, lamenting that they have not participated fully enough in the development of the Greater Bay Area, despite being keen about the opportunities. They include the Hong Kong General Chamber of Commerce, the Hong Kong Exporters Association, the Chinese General Chamber of Commerce, and the Law Society. Leung said resourceful and with many members, these groups should expand their services and help advocate for beneficial policies on the mainland. He added Hong Kong should make use of its English language advantage to promote the city as an excellent base for multinational companies to access the Greater Bay Area, and with their GBA headquarters set up in Hong Kong. On the legislation work of Article 23, Leung said the government has not fully used examples from other countries to illustrate that Hong Kong is not the only place imposing a security law. Leung also mentioned the recent case of Hong Kong-born Singaporean businessman Philip Chan, who was given notice by the Singaporean government designating him a politically significant person on February 2nd. Singapore said the 59-year-old is shown to be susceptible to be influenced by foreign actors and willing to advance their interests under its Foreign Interference Countermeasures Act. Chan would have to disclose information annually, including political donations he receives and his foreign affiliations and migration benefits to Singaporean authorities. Leung said the action against Chan was taken by the Singapore government, whereas future suspects under Hong Kong's proposed Article 23 could only be convicted by the courts, with a clearer picture of the red lines. Convener of the Executive Council Regina Ip said so far no foreign countries have issued a statement opposing the legislation of Article 23. She said that's because the consultation documents have listed many related legal examples from the Five Eyes Alliance. Ip stressed that national security cases are handled under common law. The 60th Munich Security Conference is being held today in Germany, gathering top politicians, government officials, and diplomats from around the world. The three-day annual summit on defense and diplomacy is poised to spotlight the Gaza situation and the war in Ukraine. As Foreign Minister Wang Yi has arrived in Germany for the conference, the U.S. Department of State revealed its Secretary of State Antony Blinken will meet with Wang Yi during the event. The coming meeting between Wang Yi and Antony Blinken will be the second high-level talks between China and the U.S. in less than a month. According to U.S. media Politico, they will likely discuss the plan of the two countries' leaders to hold a phone conversation over the coming months. Research Director of Hong Kong Zhiming Institute Hui Qing said, with sensitive issues including exports of rare earth metals and chip imports, coupled with the current level of distrust between Beijing and Washington, there's little chance that a breakthrough can be achieved, especially over the sensitive area of national security. A senior fellow at the Center for International Security and Strategy of Tsinghua University also noted the difficulty to reconcile divergent opinions towards global security issues as well.
The Munich Security Conference reflects basically a European perspective on world security. So if you look at the world from Munich, what are you going to see? You are going to see Russia as a imminent threat of the West. And they are somewhat not so certain about their own future. Because historically they talked about how the international order is falling apart.
On Saturday, Wang will deliver a keynote speech at the Munich Security Conference. At the same summit on the anniversary of the Russia-Ukraine war last year, Wang criticized some forces, saying they had wished for peace talks to fail. Hong Kong Zhiming Institute said it's likely Wang will continue to criticize the forces that provide weapons to Israel and Ukraine. Meanwhile, it's possible Wang will explore ways to deepen Sino-German relations and trade with an imminent business delegation led by German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to visit China in April. And security was tight in Munich ahead of the conference. Police set up numerous checkpoints in preparation for the Munich Security Conference, a gathering of high-ranking security and foreign policy officials. Among the first to arrive was British Foreign Secretary David Cameron. About 5,000 police officers were on duty to secure the conference. Israeli special forces raided the main hospital in southern Gaza, saying Hamas used it for cover. It comes as the families of hostages are outraged after Israel left ceasefire talks. This from NBC News.
Tonight, smoke and chaos filling the hallways of Nasser Hospital, the largest medical facility still functioning in Gaza, as Israeli troops mounted a raid in search of Hamas operatives.
Israel army tried to enter Nasser Hospital now.
Israeli special forces storming inside in the early hours of the morning. Terrified staff navigating the wards by the light of cell phones, trying to get patients to safety. In this section, part of the ceiling collapsed from what witnesses say was a direct Israeli strike.
We are attacked by Israel army at the hospital.
This is Dr. Mohammed Harara, who works in the emergency room. Our camera crew in Gaza has followed him for weeks, as night after night he's treated a flood of the wounded. He stayed at the hospital even as Israel ordered displaced people to evacuate. This morning, he finally left. But hours later, we got in touch with him again. He was back at work in another overwhelmed ER, this time in the city of Rafah.
We operate against Hamas terrorists wherever they are hiding.
Last month, a former hostage told the Associated Press that Hamas held her and over 24 hostages inside Nasser Hospital. Israel says hostages' bodies may still be there. While in Tel Aviv, fury over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to pull out of hostage talks in Cairo. Netanyahu called Hamas's demands delusional.
These families are blocking traffic in front of Israel's defense ministry. They're demanding the government make a deal to bring the hostages home now.
Gil Dickman's cousin is among the 134 hostages.
They must be a part of this negotiation because we have no time. We have to get all the hostages back right now.
And President Biden spoke to Israel's prime minister for 40 minutes tonight, their first conversation since Israel backed out of hostage negotiations.
Still ahead. Customs bust money laundering syndicate involving $14 billion. 78-year-old activist Ku Si-yu is jailed for attempting act with seditious intention. And the White House reveals the existence of a Russian anti-satellite weapon. Welcome back. The Customs and Excise Department arrested 7 people over a suspected money laundering case that involved about $14 billion. This is the largest money laundering case in the city's history. The Musangai reports.
On January 13th, the Customs and Excise Department conducted an operation and raided 11 premises in the city. Officers later arrested 5 men and 2 women aged between 23 and 74. The 7 people belonged to a money laundering syndicate, which was operated by a family. The mastermind is believed to be a 34-year-old Hong Kong resident who is not ethnic Chinese. Customs officials found that the syndicate set up at least 8 shell companies in Hong Kong, claiming they were international trading firms in sectors ranging from garment, transport, and electronics to precious stones. The group also had 16 bank accounts. Customs authorities described the amount of money being transferred illegally as astonishing.
Some transaction volumes are astonishing, with one account receiving over 100 million Hong Kong dollars in a single day, while the highest single transaction being 48 million Hong Kong dollars. With such pattern of high value, high frequency going on in all these accounts incessantly, the group had laundered about over 14 billion Hong Kong dollars in just 2 years.
Authorities added some of the family's laundered money, $2.9 billion, came from mobile application scams in India. The 7 people are now on bail and the investigation is ongoing. Customs authorities have frozen the suspects' $165 million worth of assets. News 9, TVB News.
78-year-old activist Ku Si-yu was sentenced to 9 months in prison after being found guilty of attempting or preparing to do an act with a seditious intention. In December last year, Ku said he planned to protest against the Reform District Council election by carrying a coffin and burning joss paper money outside the registration and electoral office. When giving his verdict today, Judge So Wai-tak said Ku's goal was to shame the government and create fear among people towards the authorities. Ku said he had been holding peaceful protests for decades and now has cancer with an operation needed in March or April. Judge Sosa asked Ku to remember that freedom of speech exists in Hong Kong, but it is not an absolute right. The White House has disclosed the existence of a Russian anti-satellite weapon. Some House lawmakers expressed confidence that the Biden administration has a plan to deal with it. This after a briefing by White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, with a weapon described as a national security threat.
We all came away with a very strong impression that the administration is taking this very seriously and that the administration has a plan in place. I think the Department of Defense today has indicated that what we're discussing is a Russian anti-satellite weapon. Director of National Intelligence and
White House National Security spokesman John Kirby said U.S. intelligence officials have information that Russia has obtained the capability, but that it is not currently operational. Russia has downplayed the U.S. concern. Donald Trump's hush money trial will go ahead as scheduled after a New York judge ruled that a legal challenge by Trump's defense team failed. The prosecution accused the former president of falsifying records after he allegedly paid hush money to 2 women who would have sold stories of affairs with Trump. It will be the first ever potential prosecution of a former U.S. president. This report from NBC.
The case that first made Donald Trump a criminal defendant, now the first to go to trial. A judge in Manhattan today rejecting Mr. Trump's bid to toss the case out, saying the trial will begin on March 25th. Sitting in court today by choice, the Republican frontrunner will soon be required to show up. The judge saying he expects the trial to last 6 weeks, a distraction Mr. Trump argues is aimed at trying to derail his presidential campaign.
It's a very unfair situation. They want to keep me nice and busy so I can't campaign so hard.
The judge today unpersuaded by Mr. Trump's defense team arguing they cannot adequately prepare for the trial in New York with all his other criminal cases still on the horizon, including a Florida trial over classified documents in May and his election interference case in Washington, still unscheduled. The crux of the case in Manhattan, accusations of hush money paid to a porn star ahead of the 2016 election. Falsely documented, prosecutors say, as a legal expense on the books of the Trump Organization to hide it.
Greece became the first Orthodox Christian nation to legalize same-sex marriage. The Prime Minister says the new law will abolish inequality. There have been opposition from religious groups, but the bill comfortably passed through Parliament. David Garrett with more.
Emotional and colourful celebrations as Greece became the 16th EU nation to legalise same-sex marriage. Greece becomes the first Orthodox Christian country to pass such legislation. Earlier, religious opponents of the law held rallies to try to convince politicians to side with them and block the amendment. They said allowing same-sex couples to marry and then have the same legal rights to raise children destroys the foundations of Greek society. Those in favour of equality, championing gay rights, put forward their case.
We're here promoting essentially love for everyone and every kind of family that can exist.
The Parliament were persuaded by the latter argument. The Deputy President said the law had passed with 176 voting yes and 76 voting no. The Parliament was urged to back same-sex marriage rights by the Prime Minister. Kyriakos Mitsotakis said it safeguards the obvious rights of children under the protection of their parents and provides justice to the lives of our fellow citizens of the same sex. Celebrations outside among the people whose rights are recognised. Same-sex civil partnerships have been allowed in Greece since 2015, but only biological parents had legal guardianship, leaving partners in limbo.
Discrimination, it is one of the most pervasive actually risk factor for mental health. So just knowing that there is less discrimination, that actually is is protective and promotive for LGBTQI mental health.
Campaigners say there is more to do. Gay men cannot acquire children through surrogate mothers.
It leaves outside many important aspects of LGBTQI rights. LGBTQI parenting is not fully recognized, or at least is not equally recognized as in heterosexual families.
Still, most of these here were delighted. Surveys say a slim majority of Greeks support same-sex marriage rights too. David Garrett, TVB News.
In South Korea, the government ordered the country's teaching hospitals to maintain essential medical care after a mass resignation of trainee doctors. The trainees' action comes in the wake of a government plan to increase the number of medical students. About 20% of South Korea's trainee doctors say they would resign effective on Tuesday. They say admitting more students would hurt the national health insurance scheme. In response, the government has ordered 221 teaching hospitals to prohibit annual leave and maintain essential medical care. The annual admission quota was last week increased by 2,000 to address a shortage of doctors in rural areas and essential medical departments. The plan was met with fierce opposition from those who argued it was made without consultation. Ecuador ratified a free trade agreement with China under Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa. The agreement is now pending ratification from China. After both sides approve the pact, tariffs will be removed from over 90% of goods traded between the two countries within 60 days. Around 60% of the exports will have their taxes eliminated immediately after the pact takes effect. China is the Andean country's second largest trading partner, with banana, white-leg shrimp, cocoa, and coffee being Ecuador's main exports. Its main imports from China include plastic products, furniture, and automobile parts. And that's the news. Thank you for watching.